Let's begin with one truth that most people never fully grasp. The difference between success and failure is rarely talent. It's rarely luck. It's not background, education, or even timing. More often than not, it comes down to one simple force: persistence. The ability to keep going when it's boring, when it's hard, when no one's clapping, when the results are invisible and your energy is low. That's when your future is decided. Now, most people love to start. They love the first day of a new plan, the rush of ambition, the glow of possibility. But very few love the part that actually matters: the days, the weeks, the months of consistent action that nobody sees. And that's where persistence lives. You see, desire is your starting fuel. Faith gives you direction. But persistence keeps the engine running long after motivation is gone. Persistence is not about working 20 hours a day. It's not blind hustle. It's disciplined commitment. It's emotional endurance. It's showing up when excuses would be easier. I've studied hundreds of the most successful people of my time, and without exception, every one of them hit walls. They faced rejection. They failed. They doubted themselves. But they persisted. They kept going when others quit. They adapted. They moved forward when there was no applause, no paycheck, no promise. They built something most people never touch: grit. You want to build wealth? Change your life? Impact the world? Then understand this: you will be tested. Your vision will be challenged. You will be tempted to quit. And in those moments, it won't be your talent that saves you. It will be your persistence. Because success doesn't go to the smartest. It goes to the one who refuses to stop. So the question isn't, how good are you when you start? The question is, how strong are you when it gets hard? That's the real separator. And in this chapter, this journey, we're going to build that strength. We're going to define what persistence looks like in practice. We're going to show you how to stay committed, how to push through resistance, and how to become the person who doesn't need motivation to keep moving. You won't just want success. You'll develop the endurance to earn it. Because if you can master persistence, there is nothing you cannot reach. Persistence begins where desire gets tested. Anyone can want something. Anyone can dream big for a day or two. But only a few can stay with that desire when it starts demanding more than excitement. You see, desire without persistence is just wishful thinking. It sounds good. It feels good. But it does nothing. Persistence is what gives desire teeth. It gives it muscle. It transforms a wish into a will. That's why I say, if your desire is weak, your persistence will collapse. But when your desire becomes a burning obsession, you'll keep moving through every doubt, delay, and difficulty. You won't need perfect circumstances. You won't need cheerleaders. You won't even need visible progress, because you'll be powered by something deeper: conviction. Let me ask you something. How bad do you want what you say you want? Because if you're not willing to persist, you don't really want it. You just like the idea of it. That's a tough truth, but an important one. Now here's what you must know. Persistence is not a personality trait. It's not something you either have or don't. It's a habit, a discipline, a decision you make over and over again. And like all habits, it can be trained. So how do you train persistence? You begin by setting clear goals that mean something, not goals that impress others, not vague dreams like be successful or get rich. Real goals, specific, measurable, emotional, goals that fire you up because they're personal, because they come from your core, because they align with who you're becoming, not who you've been. Then, once you have that vision in place, you must commit to daily action, not occasional bursts, daily. Small steps that compound. Most people wait to feel motivated, but persistent people don't wait. They move. They act. They create their own momentum by doing what must be done, whether they feel like it or not. That's the key, because persistence is forged in those moments when comfort says, take a break, and discipline answers, not yet. The world is full of talented people who never followed through, smart people who got bored, creative people who got distracted. But the people who win, they're the ones who keep showing up. And every time they do, they send a message to their subconscious. By Jess, I finish what I start. I don't back down. I persist. And soon, the mind begins to believe it. You become someone different. Not just someone who wants success, but someone who earns it. And that is the power of building persistence into your identity. It's no longer something you try to do. It becomes who you are. So if you want more progress in your life, don't just ask for new tools. Don't just chase new ideas. Ask yourself this: can I commit to the process longer than most are willing? Can I keep moving when the excitement fades? Can I push forward when others quit? Because that's the battlefield where results are earned, not in the first step, but in the 50th, when no one's looking and the reward still feels far away. That's where you find yourself. That's where persistence is built. And that's where you begin to separate from the average forever. Let me tell you something few people understand. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're getting close to something valuable. You see, the moment you commit to a goal, a meaningful, personal, demanding goal, resistance shows up. Not because you're weak, but because you're growing. Resistance is the gatekeeper between your old life and your next level. And most people turn around when they meet it. They feel tired, they get rejected, they lose momentum, and they interpret that as a message. Maybe this isn't for me. But let me ask you this. What if the resistance you feel is proof that you're on the right path? What if it's not there to block you, but to shape you? The world doesn't give its best rewards to those who merely try. It gives them to those who outlast the test. Because persistence isn't just about how hard you can push, it's about how long you can endure without visible reward. Anyone can show up when things are working, but the one who keeps showing up when it's silent, when the doors stay closed, when it feels like nothing is moving, that's the one who eventually breaks through. And here's the secret. Most people quit just before the shift happens. They stop 3 feet from gold. They back down just as the tide was about to turn. Because resistance felt like rejection, but it wasn't. It was preparation. It was pressure forming strength. It was the fire refining your identity. So how do you stay persistent when everything in you wants to stop? You shift your relationship with pain. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what is this building in me? You stop viewing struggle as failure and start viewing it as feedback. You say, this challenge is sharpening me. This delay is deepening my roots. This pressure is testing how bad I really want it. And when you think like that, resistance loses its power. It no longer intimidates you. It activates you. You start to expect it. You even respect it. Because you know it's the final exam before breakthrough. Now let me be very clear. Persistence is not about ignoring reality. It's not about stubbornly forcing what clearly doesn't work. It's about being committed to the outcome, but flexible in the approach. You test, you learn, you refine, but you don't stop. You find another way. You adapt without giving up. That's what separates the obsessed from the interested. So here's your challenge. The next time you hit resistance, don't panic. Don't pause. Don't start rewriting your entire goal. Instead ask, what is this teaching me? How can I use this moment to get better? What would the persistent version of me do next? And then do it. Because every act of persistence is a declaration to yourself that you are not here to flirt with success. You're here to earn it. Brick by brick, day by day, decision by decision. That's how empires are built. That's how identities are forged. That's how dreams stop being fantasies and start becoming your life. And it starts every single time you choose not to quit. Persistence is not a product of force. It's not about gritting your teeth and charging forward blindly. It's not about pushing harder for the sake of pushing. Persistence, in its most powerful form, is an act of inner mastery. Because before you can persist in the outer world, you must first learn to persist within yourself. That means developing self-discipline, the ability to command your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, the ability to say no to distractions, no to excuses, no to the easy road. Because every time you give in to comfort, you make persistence weaker. And every time you say, I'll do it anyway, you make it stronger. Discipline is the root. Persistence is the fruit. They grow together. Now here's the truth. Most people lose the battle before they even begin. Not because they're incapable, but because their mind isn't trained to obey their goals. They say they want success, but when the alarm goes off, they stay in bed. They say they want to build a business, but when it's time to work, they scroll their phone. They say they want to change their life, but when resistance shows up, they call it a sign to stop. That's not persistence. That's emotional reaction. An emotional reaction will rob you every time. You must become the kind of person who does what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel. Because feelings are fleeting, but decisions, when repeated, become identity. And identity is what drives long-term success. So if you want to become more persistent, stop trying to feel better. Start building habits that support your mission. Structure your day. Set non-negotiables. Protect your focus. Remove the things that weaken your fire, whether it's people, patterns, or environments. Your mind is a tool. If you don't train it, it will default to comfort. But when you train it daily, deliberately, you gain leverage over everything. Now let's talk about another internal driver, willpower. People treat willpower like a mystery, like something you're born with. But I'll tell you the truth. Willpower is a decision. It's choosing your future self over your current mood. It's acting in alignment with your goals, not your cravings. Willpower doesn't show up magically. It shows up when you give it structure, when you build systems, when you remove friction and replace it with rhythm. And from that rhythm, persistence begins to take root. It becomes easier to keep going because you've already decided that quitting isn't an option. You don't need to negotiate with yourself every day. You already know the answer. I'm doing it anyway. That's power. That's stability. That's how greatness is built. So if you want to persist in your goals, start by persisting in your mindset. Discipline your environment. Discipline your attention. Discipline your energy. And most of all, discipline your belief. Because nothing will erode your persistence faster than believing that struggle means you're failing. It doesn't. Struggle means you're building strength. And persistence is that strength in motion. So build it where it matters most. In the quiet, daily decisions you make when no one's watching. Because that's where your future self is being forged. Persistence doesn't appear by accident. It's not something you just find in the middle of chaos. It must be built in purpose on a strong foundation. And from everything I've studied, there are 4 pillars that hold up true persistence. Miss one, and the whole thing shakes. Strengthen all 4, and nothing can stop you. Let me walk you through them. 1. Definite purpose. The first pillar is clarity. If you don't know exactly what you want, you won't persist. You might work hard, you might stay busy. But without a clear direction, your energy scatters. You'll chase 10 things and finish none. You'll move fast, but go nowhere. That's why the first step to building persistence is getting absolutely clear about your goal. What do you want? Why do you want it? What will your life look like when you have it? Write it down, define it. Make it vivid, emotional, personal, because a vague goal will never create strong action, but a definite purpose. It will pull you forward even on the hardest days. 2. Burning desire. The second pillar is emotional fuel, not casual interest, not would be nice, but burning inner fire. The kind of desire that keeps you up at night. The kind that makes you feel restless when you're not working on it. This isn't about hype. It's about emotional commitment, because desire gives persistence a reason to stay alive when everything around you says quit. And if your desire fades, go back to your vision. Reconnect with the emotional why. Remind yourself what's at stake if you don't follow through, because a strong enough reason will always find a way. 3. Faith. The third pillar is belief. Belief that what you're doing matters. Belief that you are capable. Belief that even if you don't see the results, yet progress is happening. Without faith, persistence collapses. You start second guessing. You lose energy. You listen to the wrong voices. But with faith, you become unstoppable. And this kind of faith isn't blind. It's built. It comes from consistent action, focused thinking, and speaking words of power. Affirm your goals. Speak life into your effort. Feed your mind daily with reasons to believe. Because if you stop believing, you'll stop trying. 4. A concrete plan. The fourth pillar is structure. You can have all the desire in the world, but without a plan, you'll burn out or get lost. Persistence needs direction. It needs measurable action. It needs a blueprint. Even if that plan isn't perfect, start with something. Know what you're doing this week, today, this hour. Don't guess your way forward. Lead yourself forward. And if your plan fails, adjust it. But never abandon the mission. Because flexibility in method, combined with stubbornness in vision, that's the secret to long-term persistence. So ask yourself, do I know what I want? Do I truly desire it? Do I believe I can reach it? And do I have a plan in motion? If even one of those answers is no, you found the crack in your foundation. Fix it. Rebuild it. Strengthen it. Because when those 4 pillars are solid, persistence is no longer a struggle. It becomes who you are. Let me clear up a myth. Lack of persistence is not a character flaw. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you just don't have what it takes. No, lack of persistence is usually the result of one thing: mental conditioning. You've been trained, often unconsciously, to give up early, to doubt yourself, to seek comfort, to avoid risk, to listen more to your fear than to your goals. And if you were raised in an environment where people quit easily, where failure was feared, where effort was mocked, then of course persistence feels foreign. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because you can change it. You can rewire your habits. You can retrain your mind. And once you do, persistence becomes natural. So how do you do it? You start by examining the thoughts that kill your consistency. Thoughts like, it's too late, I'm not good enough, this probably won't work, I'll start again tomorrow. These thoughts are not facts. They're conditioning. And the more you believe them, the more you reinforce the pattern of quitting. So you must challenge them. When a thought says, this is too hard, you answer, yes, and I'm strong enough. When your mind whispers, just take a break, you say, not until I finish what I promised myself. This is how persistence is rebuilt, one thought at a time. Now, let's talk about influence, because your environment plays a massive role. If you surround yourself with people who quit, you'll start thinking quitting is normal. If your newsfeed is full of instant success stories, you'll believe that struggle means something's wrong. But real success? It comes slow. It comes through challenge. It comes through repeated effort after excitement fades. So upgrade your influences. Read stories of people who endured. Listen to voices that challenge you. Spend time with those who act, not just talk. Persistence is contagious, just like doubt is. And here's something else to understand. Most people don't quit at the beginning. They quit when progress slows, when results stall, when it feels like they're doing everything right and nothing is working. That's the breaking point. That's the moment your old identity says, let's go back. Let's quit before it gets worse. Let's tell ourselves a nice story about how it wasn't meant to be. But you can't listen to that voice, because on the other side of that voice is the breakthrough you've been waiting for. You just have to keep going long enough to see it. And finally, understand that persistence isn't about being perfect. It's not about never having doubts. It's not about always feeling strong. It's about choosing to act even when you don't. You will have weak moments. You will have bad days. You will feel tempted to stop. But every time you say, not today, I keep going, you build a stronger version of yourself. And over time, that version wins. So if you've struggled with persistence in the past, don't shame yourself. Don't label yourself. Rebuild yourself. One decision, 1 hour, one disciplined step at a time. That's how the tide turns. Let's talk about failure. Not as an ending, not as a punishment, but as a tool. Because here's what I've learned from years of studying the most successful people in the world. The most persistent people aren't the ones who failed the least. They're the ones who kept going the most. They failed early. They failed publicly. They failed big. But they didn't make failure their identity. They made it part of the process. They knew something most people never fully accept. Failure is feedback. It's information. It's the world's way of saying, not this method, try another. That's all. But most people don't hear it that way. They fail once and they collapse. They say, maybe I'm not cut out for this. They internalize the result instead of adjusting the strategy. And so they quit not because they were incapable, but because they misunderstood what failure really is. So let me reframe it for you. Failure is not your enemy. Fear of failure is, because when you fear failure, you stop trying new things. You avoid risk. You stay small. You choose comfort over growth. But when you accept failure as part of the process, you liberate yourself. You try faster. You learn quicker. You stop aiming for perfection and start aiming for progress. Persistence doesn't mean never falling down. It means refusing to stay there. It means asking better questions. What can I learn from this? What went wrong and how can I adjust? Is this a dead end or just a detour? The truth is, some failures are signs to pivot. But most, they're just resistance trying to test your resolve. Because here's the secret. The deeper the failure, the greater the opportunity for strength. You don't build endurance in comfort. You build it in the fire. And every time you persist after a fall, you grow stronger, not just in skill, but in character. You become harder to discourage, harder to distract, harder to break. That's why failure is so valuable, because it shakes you. And then it asks, will you still continue? The successful ones say yes. So the next time you fail, don't ask if it means stop. Ask what it means build. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's humility. Maybe it's focus. Whatever it is, claim it. Because if you learn from it, you didn't fail, you advanced. Now let me be clear. Persistence doesn't mean repeating the same mistake. It means adjusting your approach, not your ambition. It means staying committed to the goal, but flexible with the method. So when you fall, pause, reflect, refocus, and then take the next step. Because failure only becomes final when you decide to stop moving. But if you decide to continue, even with the bruises, even with the setbacks, even when the timeline doesn't match your expectations, you become unstoppable. So don't resist failure. Use it. Learn from it. Let it sharpen you. Let it harden your commitment. And every time you rise after falling, you send a message to your future. I won't quit, I won't break, I persist. Persistence is personal, but it is never built in isolation. Because whether you realize it or not, your environment is either strengthening your commitment or sabotaging it quietly every single day. No one becomes persistent in a room full of quitters, and no one stays focused in a world built for distraction. If you're serious about lasting success, you must become serious about the influences around you. Let's start with people. Who do you talk to daily? What do they value? Do they speak life or drain it? Do they act with clarity or confusion? Do they push through, or do they always have a reason to stop? The people in your life are either mirrors or anchors. They either reflect what's possible, or they pull you back to what's familiar. And most people don't even know they're being dragged. They're surrounded by those who settle, stall, and shrink. And they wonder why persistence feels impossible. It's not willpower they're missing. It's alignment. So take inventory. Who do you give energy to? Who do you listen to? Do their lives reflect something you want? If not, it's time to edit your circle. Now, I'm not saying cut everyone off, but I am saying protect your inner space like your future depends on it, because it does. And let's not forget, environment isn't just people. It's also what you consume, what you read, what you scroll, what you watch, what you allow into your mind before the world hears your voice. Because everything you let in is programming something, either strength or doubt, clarity or confusion, persistence or paralysis. So ask yourself, is my input helping me stay on course? Is my digital environment building my mindset or slowly eroding it? If you want to persist, you must audit your exposure. Feed your mind what your goals require. That means reading truth. That means listening to voices of endurance. That means removing the noise that numbs your hunger. Next, your physical space. Yes, even your surroundings matter. A cluttered space breeds a cluttered mind. A disorganized workspace leads to disorganized energy. If you're always reacting to chaos, how can you expect consistency? Design a space that invites clarity. A space where you sit down and your brain says, let's work. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to support the version of you that follows through. And finally, your routines. The smallest habits shape the strongest identities. What do your mornings say about you? What does your evening routine prepare you for? Are you starting your days on purpose or in reaction? Because persistence is not only what you do in the big moments, it's what you reinforce in the small ones. So if you want to be the kind of person who never quits, create an environment where quitting becomes unnatural. Surround yourself with people who show up. Protect your mind from cheap thinking. Organize your space to support momentum. Build habits that echo the future you're chasing. Because when your environment is aligned with your goals, persistence isn't a fight. It becomes your nature. And that's how you stop hoping for consistency and start living it. Let's talk about confidence. Real confidence. Not the kind that comes from compliments. Not the kind that needs applause. Not the kind you fake in front of a mirror. I'm talking about the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that grows from persistence. Because nothing builds confidence like doing what you said you'd do, even when no one's watching. That's where it starts. Every time you show up when it's hard, you send a signal to your subconscious. I can trust myself. Every time you follow through when no one's forcing you, you strengthen your internal authority. And over time, that trust becomes identity. It becomes certainty. It becomes power. Most people think confidence comes before action, but that's not true. Confidence comes after consistency. You earn it. You build it. You prove to yourself that you are who you say you are. And nothing, absolutely nothing, feels more powerful than that. Now let me be clear. You don't need to feel confident to act. You need to act to become confident. You need to persist through the days of doubt, through the weeks of silence, through the long stretch between planting the seed and seeing the fruit. That's where confidence is born, not in the result, but in the rhythm. Because the person who shows up again and again, despite the circumstances, becomes someone who can no longer be shaken by them. That's what persistence gives you. It doesn't just build external success. It builds internal stability. So even when things go wrong, you don't unravel. You don't panic. You don't lose yourself in the noise. You stay grounded because you've built a track record with yourself. You know how to keep going because you've done it before, and that memory becomes your fuel. So when others hesitate, you move. When others doubt, you decide. When others quit, you double down. Not because it's easy, but because it's normal for you. You've made persistence your baseline, your default, your non-negotiable. And that's where true confidence lives. It doesn't come from the crowd. It doesn't come from achievement alone. It comes from knowing that whatever happens, you won't back down. You'll adjust, sure. You'll refine, adapt, grow. But you won't quit. Because quitting is no longer part of your vocabulary. It doesn't match who you've become. And that identity? It's priceless. Because when you walk into a room with that energy, when you speak, work, lead, or create from that space, people feel it. They feel the stability. They feel the conviction. They feel the power that can only be built, not borrowed. So if you want to become unstoppable, Don't wait for confidence. Build persistence. Stack your follow-through. Honor your word. Show up again and again. And before long, you'll realize you're not faking it anymore. You're not forcing belief. You're living proof. Because persistence didn't just move you forward, it transformed who you are. Now we've arrived at the final truth, the one most people overlook, and yet it's the key to everything. Persistence is not a tactic. It's not a motivational trick. It's not a one-time push. It is a way of life. It is the bridge between every goal and its fulfillment. It is the difference between the person who starts strong and the one who finishes with power. Everything we've explored, desire, faith, planning, action, none of it works without persistence holding it together. You can have a brilliant strategy, but without persistence, you'll fold. You can have talent, resources, opportunity, but without persistence, they'll rot on the shelf. You can have all the right books, coaches, tools, but if you don't persist, you'll stay stuck at the starting line. Because success is not given, it is demanded, and the currency is consistency. Now, let me speak plainly. You will be tested. There will be days when you feel invisible. There will be seasons of silence. There will be people who don't believe in you. Maybe even people close to you. There will be moments when your old life calls you back. To comfort, to ease, to habits that no longer fit your future. And in those moments, you will have one choice to make. Quit or continue. That's it. That's the decision. It won't always be dramatic. Sometimes it'll be quiet, subtle, like hitting snooze one more time, like skipping one small step, just for today, like telling yourself maybe later. But make no mistake, those are the decisions that determine your destiny. So decide now, once and for all, that you are not available for giving up. You are not here to play halfway. You are not here to flirt with success. You are here to finish. And to do that, you must make persistence your default setting. Not something you use when you feel like it. Something you live by every day. Because when persistence becomes your nature, you become unstoppable. You stop needing perfect timing. You stop waiting for signs. You stop second-guessing every step. You simply move, and move, and move again. You take the hit and keep going. You hear the no and ask again. You fall and stand up faster each time. And one day, maybe not with fireworks, maybe not with applause, but one day, you realize you've crossed the line that most never reach. You didn't just hope. You didn't just plan. You endured. And that, my friend, is the rarest victory of all. Because persistence doesn't just change what you achieve. It changes who you become. It transforms you from a seeker into a creator, from a dreamer into a doer, from a someday person into a now person. So here's my final word to you. Write your plan. Fuel it with desire. Anchor it in belief. Take relentless action. And when it gets hard, because it will persist. Not with blind force, but with purpose, with discipline, with a refusal to go backward. Because you are no longer the person who quits. You are the person who finishes. And that kind of person will never be denied for long.